Uhuru. So Uhuru and welcome to this special event, America's Forever War Against African and Indigenous People, Exposing the FBI, America's Secret Political Police. But thanks to webinar events like this, it is quickly becoming America's worst kept secret. My name is Brendan. I'm a member of the African People's Solidarity Committee. The African People's Solidarity Committee was formed in 1976 by the African People's Socialist Party with the mandate to organize other white people to build the movement of reparations and genuine solidarity with the liberation of African people. That is our assignment. That is our goal. That is what we work towards every day under the direct leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. Before we get started, if you're tuning in on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe to get alerts whenever we go live or post a new video. If you are tuning in on Facebook, please share. Let all your friends know that this event is happening. Invite them. And then let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Go ahead and tell us that. And then we will have a Q&A later in the program. So take notes. And then enter your questions in the Q&A feature on Zoom. If you are on YouTube or Facebook, just go ahead and put those in the chat, in the comments section on there. So again, I'd like to reemphasize the understanding of white solidarity with Black power is something we need to spread across the planet. So please subscribe to the Uhuru Solidarity channel and share it with others. I would like to let everybody joining us today know this event is a fundraiser for the Uhuru Solidarity Center, where Chairwoman Penny and myself are right now. It is really the international headquarters of the Uhuru Solidarity movement, since we are an international organization. It's a beautiful organizing center. It's located on the south side of St. Louis with a big banner in front that says "Unity Through Reparations." The building is owned by the African People's Socialist Party's Black Star Industries. We have a goal tonight, so this is kind of what we're working towards tonight, to raise $500. I think that's really easy. I think we can get that in no time. So please, just throughout the program, go to apscuhuru.org/donate. So in today's event, we will hear a presentation from APSC Chair Penny Hess, and she will be joined by APSC member Sandra Forrest for some discussion. Penny is one of the Uhuru 3 currently being targeted by the US government for working for reparations from the white community under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. And I would like to salute that leadership, my leadership, the leadership of the Solidarity Committee, the chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, Omali Yeshitela, who developed the political theory of African internationalism and who represents the leadership of the African Revolution around the world. I would also like to salute Deputy Chair Onizine Yeshitela, who coordinates the economic development work of the movement, including the incredible Black Power Blueprint, which we're incredibly lucky to have here in St. Louis. And I would also like to salute APSC Chairwoman Penny Hess, as well as Sandra Forrest, who are joining me. They are going to start the program off tonight. They're going to give an overview of the historic attacks made by the FBI against African and Indigenous people. So welcome, Chairwoman Penny and Sandra.
Uhuru, thank you, Brendan. I also want to salute African People's Socialist Party Chairman Omali Yeshitela, Deputy Chair Onizine Yeshitela, the entire Central Committee of the APSP and of the African People's Solidarity Committee. I'm honored to be here from Washington State and participate in this program today. And the theme, as Brendan said, of our event tonight is America's Forever War Against African and Indigenous People, exposing the FBI, America's secret political police. And we covered some of that history in our event in January, which you can go back and watch on the Uhuru Solidarity Movement's YouTube channel. So tonight we're going to dig deeper into the complicity of the white left with the FBI and the role the white left has played in the attacks on the African liberation movement, and what we can do about that if we truly want to stand in solidarity from the white community with the African anti-colonial struggle led by the African People's Socialist Party. What is our role? How can we rectify? How can we do the right thing? So, this discussion takes place within the context of the current U.S. government attacks on the African People's Socialist Party and the Uhuru movement that really began in earnest. Although the party has suffered attacks or have been the victim of attacks or survived attacks over the decades, but this current very, very serious attack began in earnest on July 29th, 2022, when the FBI conducted a violent military raid of 7 Uhuru movement offices and homes, including the home of Chairman Omali Yeshitela and Onizine Yeshitela, the home of African People's Solidarity Committee leaders, Chairwoman Penny Hess and Kitty Riley, and that of Uhuru Solidarity Movement Chair Jesse Neville and Amanda Carlozzi, as well as the Uhuru House in St. Petersburg and the Uhuru Solidarity Center in St. Louis, Missouri, and descended on the residence of the African People's Socialist Party's communication work, leader of the party's communication work, Director Akile Anai. And, as I think most people are aware, those pre-dawn raids lasted for more than 6 hours. They involved armored vehicles, assault weapons, flashbang devices, drones, and scores of agents. They stole computers, electronics, phones, and files. And then in April of this year, Chairman Omali Yeshitela, along with Jesse Neville and Penny Hess, were indicted and charged with federal crimes. With these 2 federal crimes, 18 United States Code Section 371, which is conspiring to commit an offense against the United States, and 18 United States Code Section 951, which is, quote, acting as an agent of a foreign government, quote, to wit, the Russian Federation. And of course, these are outrageous and completely bogus charges targeting Chairman Omali because of his 50+ years of heroic and uncompromising leadership of the African nation, fighting for unification and liberation. We understand that the government intends to go to trial in early 2020, but the Uhuru 3 attorneys have filed a brilliant motion to dismiss that a judge has yet to rule on. You can find that motion on handsoffuhuru.org, and Hands Off Uhuru will be holding a webinar in September to sum up this motion to dismiss and the responses. And it is such a beautiful motion to dismiss. So if you haven't read it, really encourage people to go to Hands Off Uhuru, read that, and sign up to make sure that you get all of the newsletters and notifications of what's happening in the Hands Off Uhuru campaign. So our leading presenter in tonight's program is African People's Solidarity Committee Chairwoman Penny Hess. And there is no one better to discuss America's Forever Wars on African Indigenous people, the FBI, and the role of the white left in government attacks on the African anti-colonial struggles. Chairwoman Penny was there for the founding of the Solidarity Movement under the leadership of Chairman O'Malley in 1976. And she has been on the forefront of all of the ideological, political, and practical struggles waged to win white people to a stand of genuine solidarity with Black power. She is the author of Overturning the Culture of Violence, which I encourage everyone to order from the burningspear.store if you don't already have it. So greetings and salute to Penny Hess, the chair of the African People's Solidarity Committee. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Sandy, and uhuru everybody who's here. Uhuru to Comrade Brendan, who's sitting right next to me here in St. Louis. And just very excited to be here tonight. I want to thank everybody who has come on this meeting, which I think is very, very important part of the political education that we all need to understand the world as it really is. And as people are perhaps aware, the African People's Solidarity Committee is the organization of white people under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party, formed in 1976. And it is historic. It is the first time that white people have been organized under the leadership of an African revolutionary party that is fighting for the liberation of Africa and African people everywhere. So I have to join in saluting my leadership, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Everything that I understand about the world is from him and from the political understandings of African internationalism, the political theory of the African People's Socialist Party. And I also salute the deputy chair of the party, Deputy Chair Onizine Yeshitela, who leads just the incredible political-economic front of the African People's Socialist Party, which has not missed a beat in the middle of these brutal attacks coming down by the colonial state. Just continued to dedicate and finish up the basketball court here in St. Louis on the north side, in the most impoverished neighborhood of the city. 97% African population of that neighborhood, and the the housing that's going to be dedicated, beautiful housing that is dedicated to the program for the African Independence Workforce Development Program for African people coming out of the colonial prison system, the Women's Health Center, the doula program. There is just so much. A beautiful community garden, and the Uhuru House itself, which was a condemned building, but part of the entire what's called the Black Power Blueprint. Just really want to salute this. I want to invite anybody who hasn't been here yet to St. Louis to come on over, come to St. Louis and see what Black political power looks like. It is very, very exciting and a profound honor to be under the leadership of that. And, just want to say that the chairman talks about this crisis of imperialism that we are facing, and our responsibility is to win other white people to understand what the chairman calls the colonial mode of production. That colonialism is not a bad policy. It's not something that happened in the past, but the colonialism is the DNA of this system that we live in. It couldn't exist without the assault on African people, without the enslavement of African people and turning Africans into what they call chattel, which means movable property under the law, as opposed to real estate, and that that it wouldn't exist without the genocide against the indigenous people. And just today, in the New York Times, there was an article about how in Chile, after the US-backed coup against Allende killed him and overturned that socialist government and installed the US-backed terrorist Pinochet, there was an article about how the current government is going to be opening an investigation to find out where all of the disappeared, as they called them, under Pinochet, were murdered, who were fighting the resistance against this US-backed coup. And then there was another article about how Britain's role in in killing people in Ireland as they were fighting in what they call the Troubles, which was an anti-colonial struggle there. And Chairman O'Malley Shatella visited Northern Ireland during that period as well, and won from the Irish Republican Socialist Party the commitment to unity with the struggle for liberation of African people here inside the United States against US colonialism. And we see, the coups that are going on, like in Niger and Burkina Faso, and today in Gabon against the French, and kicking out the French colonizers from Africa, and just the struggle that is going on there to liberate Africa from the brutal ravages of colonialism that exists there. And the other night in the Hands Off Uhuru event, we discussed with the committee about Leonard Peltier still in prison almost 50 years on land stolen from the indigenous people, that the chairman called it an obscenity that this colonial prison system could hold and have the power to hold Leonard Peltier in prison for all these years. And we know, Mutulu Shakur, who was an African freedom fighter who was released as he was dying. He passed away just a few months ago. Sundiata Acoli, who was in prison for 50 years. Assata Shakur, who courageously escaped to Cuba, who there's a $2 million bounty on her head, and and this government and the Obama administration, the Democrats, are completely complicit with that. There's Lynn. Just really want to salute and remember Lynn Stewart, who was also in prison for her stand in support of Arab people, and she was imprisoned and basically had a life sentence there, only released a few months before she died. And we want to remember the people of Cuba, the people of Venezuela, the Palestinian people, just and the role that the US secret international police, the CIA, and other kinds of things constantly wage against them, the counterinsurgency that wants to destroy their revolutionary movements and their right even to live, to just carry out genocide against them. And Malcolm X and his daughter has sued the FBI, the CIA, and the New York Police Department for the murder of her father, Malcolm X. And Martin Luther King's children also had a lawsuit around against the FBI to open up this. So, I just want to say that the conditions of African people, of indigenous people, and oppressed and colonized peoples around the world are pure, unadulterated hell every single day. Nothing is easy. Every single thing is an obstacle that has to be overcome in order to survive another day. This is true of the colonialism inside the borders of the United States, the colonial mode of production, and US colonial domination around the world. And the Chairman O'Malley Shatella has stated that it's not legal for colonized people to be free or even to fight for their freedom, that this is the basis for what we're calling the forever wars. And it's the basis for the attacks on Chairman O'Malley Shatella, because he's going to be 82 years old in a few weeks, in a month or so. And he has fought courageously his entire life to free Africa, to unite African people everywhere, and to liberate Africa and African people wherever they have been forcibly dispersed through the colonial mode of production. And, we're talking about forever wars. The US is listed in Wikipedia as having been part of at least, quote, 107 wars. And if you look at them, of course, that's just probably, no doubt, a tiny percentage of what the US has done overtly around the world since its beginning. And the United States is built on war, built on, as we said, the assault on Africa, the genocide of the indigenous people, and the colonial domination. And the majority of US wars, by the way, that are listed are wars against the indigenous people, the genocidal wars of conquest, the wars against the Lakota, the indigenous peoples throughout what is now the United States, the colonialism that is here. And I'm here in St. Louis, where which was the actual staging ground for the extermination of the indigenous people. What's called the Jefferson Barracks was the staging ground and the training ground of US generals. There's a city in California called Fremont, California, and that's named after John Fremont, who was based in St. Louis, who rode out to the conquest and genocide against the indigenous people as far as California, just throughout this country. So, this is the center ground of where these genocidal wars were carried out. There's also an ongoing war against African people, because colonialism is war. Colonialism is destruction and terrorism and murder. And when we see these lists of the wars that the U.S. has been involved in, waged against colonized people, it doesn't talk about just all forms of war against African people, the lynchings, the burnings, the murders and mutilations of African people that was common. And it was a popular white people's army. No white person was ever indicted for that, for murdering an African person, for burning down an African city like Tulsa, Oklahoma, or or this torture called lynchings. And I had the ability to go to what's called the lynching memorial in Montgomery, Alabama, and I really would urge anybody who has the ability to do that. It is incredibly powerful and moving, and just incredible to see, to just be overwhelmed by the numbers of murders of African people that was carried out as part of the civil rights, of the right of American citizenship for a white person, a colonizer inside this country historically. And this idea of the war against, the peoples of the world and inside the US, it doesn't talk about the fugitive slave law, the Dred Scott decision, which said that African people had no rights that a white person had to honor or respect. And the burning of Tulsa, Oklahoma, which was known as the Black Wall Street, Rosewood, Florida, and so many other places. The burning and firebombing of the Move family in Philadelphia, and the legal destruction of African neighborhoods like Mill Creek Valley here in St. Louis, or the gas plant neighborhood in St. Petersburg, Florida, where the chairman was born, actually. And it doesn't include just the incredible resistance of Nat Turner and Denmark Vesey and so many others, and the revolution of African people in Haiti, and the US response to this, and the general hell that is the life under colonialism every single day, whether you're in the southern US, whether you're in northern US, all throughout this country, there is the colonial mode of production. And so, it doesn't include the proven US government counterinsurgency with the imposition of drugs, heroin, and crack cocaine consciously into African communities, and and also to fund its counterinsurgency against the people of Nicaragua, who had won a revolution there in late 1970s. It doesn't talk about the mass imprisonment, the police violence, the conscious starving of African community of resources, redlining, draining them of everything they have. And it doesn't include US role in Africa, even as we speak, vicious, overturning of killing Thomas Sankara and overturning Kwame Nkrumah's government in Ghana and so many others. Patrice Lumumba in Congo, assassinated, the role that US has played to maintain the grip and the colonial domination of Africa and African people. So yeah, so when we talk about the FBI and this is counterinsurgency, a war against people who are rising up for their freedom, COINTELPRO and the attack on Black liberation of the 60s, and the attacks on the African People's Socialist Party that have intensified over the years, and the ability for the FBI and secret political police to function and how it got its start, it had the complicity of white leftists in attacking the Garvey movement and taking this on. And there has been historically a deep unity of the white left with the colonial state, including the FBI, the colonial secret political police. And in a lot of ways, the FBI got its start with complicity of the white left and the Communist Party in the attack on the incredible movement of Marcus Garvey, beginning in 1918, more than 100 years ago. And, again, we have to, in order to understand history, in order to even understand white left opportunism and white opportunism in general, we do have to understand the political theory of African internationalism. We have to embrace it, and it allows us to step through all of the barriers in our own brain that we are taught based on the fact that we have a material basis, that we sit on the pedestal on the backs of African and colonized peoples. It allows us to see the world as African and oppressed people everywhere experience it. And it's very, very powerful because it is from the leadership of the African liberation movement that enables us to see that. And that that the chairman's understanding of the political theory of African internationalism, this colonial mode of production, is that the condition facing African people is colonialism, not racism. As the chairman said, he doesn't give a damn what you think about him. They want power over their lives, the power to govern, the reparations, the return of their stolen resources. A report just came out recently from the CARICOM, the Caribbean countries, saying, with an incredible thing that actually Hands Off Uhuru will be having an event about pretty soon, that talks about the fact that $131 trillion are owed African people in the Americas and Caribbean in reparations from stolen labor, from the conditions imposed on them. And that is more than the gross domestic product of the entire United States. So yeah, so I wanted to say that it is not a question of racism, and it is not something that white people changing ideas in our heads is going to change. This is a political system that is built on sucking the blood of African people. So again, to reiterate what the chairman said, for African people to struggle for their freedom is not legal. It is not legal. That's why they are attacked, they're murdered, and beaten down in every possible way. And to say, when the chairman is talking about the colonial mode of production, a mode of production is essentially how things are produced in a given society. And an honest look at the US and the world shows that everything in this society is produced at the expense of African and colonized peoples. So yeah, so this is very, very important for us to understand and come at it from this perspective, because otherwise we can't see the world as it truly is. And again, the chairman shows us that white people are if there's colonialism, then there's colonizers and they're colonized, and that white people sit on the pedestal on the backs of African people. We are the colonizers, and it doesn't mean everybody is rich. It doesn't mean there's not oppression within that. But I do want to say there is social wealth. And I was just reading that the amount of money that's in wills ready to be dispensed to the next generation is $89 trillion. That transfer of wealth, that's a broad sector of the white population transferring wealth to the next generation. And that is actually greater than the gross domestic product of the United States, the amount of wealth that is being transferred to the next generation. That's what social wealth is. African people do not have that because there's social wealth. They had no social wealth. They lived and died for the benefit of the white population. This is the understanding that the chairman has brought. And we have the ability as the colonizer to not have to see what African people experience, not have to see the reality of colonialism. And it is really critical that we begin to open our eyes to this reality and take a stand, which we can do now for the first time ever under the leadership of the African Revolution, to be voices for Black power in whiteface under the leadership of African people fighting for their liberation. And, I just want to say that over the many years, the almost 50 years actually of being part of the African People's Solidarity Committee, that some of the most vicious attacks on the party and other things that I've seen, on other sectors of the African liberation movement we have faced is from the white left. The white left has acted as skilled and insidious, a kind of vehicle to maintain colonialism and the colonial mode of production, to maintain white control and domination over African, indigenous, and colonized peoples, never listening to the voice of the colonized, to the articulation of the world through the colonized, always trying to modify that and to be interventionist in a way that separates and pits groups against each other, which is part of what COINTELPRO's goals are. So I just want to say that the white left line is one that equates the colonizer and the colonized. And this is not about racism, and it's not about changing the ideas in white people's heads. And, this is why the party formed the African People's Solidarity Committee under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party to organize in the white community for reparations. And it's a historic relationship. It's a liberating relationship. It rectifies our relationship to African people and the colonized of the planet. And it takes us it lets us jump off this pedestal that we're sitting on and join in genuine solidarity with the peoples on planet Earth.
Chairman Penny, well, I really appreciate how you're talking about a full scope of when we say permanent forever wars. We're talking tonight, and we're going to get into a little bit more detail about the FBI as secret police and what they do and have done and are doing, but it's the violence in the forever wars, as you've just laid out, is inherent to the colonial mode of production. The comfortable white life that we have is completely and unbreakably tied to the violence carried out, the horrible, just unbearably unimaginable violence that is carried out against African and Indigenous peoples. And so we'll often see a call for an approach to the FBI or the secret police in some kind of a reform call, like to rein in the police, to have give them education, to be nicer to Black people, or demilitarize or things like that. But the state itself, the system, the whole thing is part of the forever wars. So I think that you've laid that out, and in so many ways. But I know we wanted to talk a little bit, just to get into a little more meat of how the FBI has functioned, and then what has been the role specifically of the white left, and what we want to popularize a new and an approach to the struggles of African people and the struggles against FBI and state violence, where we are really acting, as Black power and white face, and really are taking a principled stand. We know that Marcus Garvey, so going back to the beginnings of the FBI, we know that Marcus Garvey, that the FBI that we know today was born in the government's war on the Garvey movement. So could you paint a picture of the era in which Garvey emerged? What was the scope and significance of the Garvey movement, and how, and describe how the U.S. government set out to destroy it, and then what was the role that was played by the white left or the progressive movements at that time?
Yes. I mean, I think it's really important, and I also want to say that the Garvey movement of the early 20th century, and it really didn't last that long, because it was hit brutally by the FBI, by an attack on it, was the most amazing movement that, and what do white people know about it? Almost nothing. It's an incredible movement of 11 million members of African people around the world, and had the slogan "Africa for Africans at home and abroad," meaning Africa and wherever they have been forcibly dispersed. So it's just amazing. And that movement has been elevated and held up by the African People's Socialist Party. It was virulently attacked by the white left as well, and with petty bourgeoisie, neocolonialists of the African population. It was just, brutally attacked. The white left worked with the FBI again to bring down the Garvey movement and work to build up their own. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it. But in the first imperialist war, World War I, also known as World War I, there were a lot of, for the first time, quite a few African people fought in that. They felt like they fought for the United States. But when they came home, when they came back to the United States, I would say, a lot of Africans were attacked and lynched in their uniforms, in their army uniforms. There was just huge waves of white nationalist violence against African people all over the country. In 1917, in East St. Louis, in Illinois, right across the river from St. Louis, there was a brutal massacre of African workers by white workers. And in fact, that was one of the things that sparked Garvey, who was a young man, came from Jamaica to Harlem, and had a mission, to see, where is the African government? He said, where is our Constitution? Where are our laws? Where is our culture? And where is our land? That's Africa. And he fought for this. It was just an amazing, amazing thing. And the response from African people was electrifying. And so after the first imperialist war, again, African people were angry. They were, they were in a state of resistance. And again, they had fought for the U.S., and the U.S. was exposing very clearly that they're colonized. They're not going to have rights. They're not going to be able to wear their army uniform down the street without being lynched. And there were incredible, brutal, horrific lynchings of African men and women. And in the summer of 1919, it was called Red Summer, because there were so many African uprisings all throughout the US. And the Chicago uprising was one of the truly historic ones, which is something that that people should Google and look up, because Africans on the south side of Chicago held their territory and kept the forces of the US government or our Chicago Police Department out for 2 weeks. They held power in the African community of South Chicago. And so, you know, that was incredible. It was a period of anti-colonial struggle. Also, the Bolshevik Revolution, the Chinese Revolution was also growing, but the Bolshevik Revolution won victory in the Soviet Union, Russia. There were struggles going on in Ireland, South America, Cuba, Vietnam, Nicaragua, everything that we see. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. And there were people like W.E.B. Du Bois, who is a very powerful, you know, historian and writer, but there, you know, he was like, well, we have to be patient. We have to win our rights over time. And there were assimilationists, et cetera, who fiercely fought Garvey and worked with the FBI to destroy Garvey. But Garvey represented the will of the masses of the people to be free, to be liberated, and to have power in their own hands. I just wanted to read an article that was actually in the New York Times in 1924 in the archives of the New York Times. And it just, you know, it's very amazing. And actually 1924, the first World Convention of the Negro Peoples of the World, it was called, was held at Madison Square Garden in New York City, and for part of it, but it was a month long in Harlem that brought 25,000 people from around the world, Africans from around the world, to Harlem for that month-long convention. It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And that the Garvey, this article is from 1924. So Garvey was already under attack, and he was out on appeal from the federal charges that he was railroaded for by the FBI. But I just want to read the article, because the article really, you know, it's a really pretty good article for the New York Times. And it's saying Garvey reviews Big Negro Parade. And they call him the President General of the African Republic, opens convention that will last a month. Shining sabers guard him, African Legion, Black Cross nurses, and Boy and Girl Scouts among 3,500 marchers on 7th Avenue up in Harlem. Just incredible. And there's pictures of that, thousands and thousands of people marching in a parade, in a kind of parade that shows the victory and the power of the Garvey movement. This says Marcus Garvey, President General of the African Republic and head of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, stood in a gorgeous uniform on a reviewing stand in front of 54 West 135th Street yesterday afternoon, surrounded by a glittering staff of sabered satellites, and reviewed a parade of 3,500 Negro men and women, which set a large part of Harlem wild with enthusiasm. The parade, which followed religious services in Liberty Hall at 120 West 138th Street, marked the opening of a convention of the Negro organization, which Garvey said would continue for 31 days and 31 nights. The first address was delivered last night in Carnegie Hall, when Garvey urged all dissatisfied American, quote unquote, Negroes to leave the United States and become residents of the African Republic. The first expedition to which was to leave here for Liberia in October, according to Garvey's present plans. Garvey said there are 30,000 members of the Universal Negro Improvement Association in New York City, and 25,000 more in other parts of the United States and British possessions. All sections, including Liberia, sent delegations to the convention. So, you know, it just goes on. It's saying a large part of the marchers yesterday were officers and men of the African Legion, uniformed in black with red trimmings and much gold lace. There were regiments from New York, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and several of the southern states, and units from Boston, St. Louis, Detroit, Chicago, Hartford, Miami, Toronto, Panama, Barbados, Antigua, and the British Guyana. Black Cross nurses, 8 bands, and nearly a dozen floats also were in line. A platoon of mounted police led the parade, and the marshals of various divisions and their aides were mounted, meaning, you know, their people. So yeah, so it just goes on. This is an amazing and very positive article, interestingly, in the bourgeois media about the Garvey movement. And again, you know, there were 11 million Africans around the world who were part of it. And the again, you know, the slogan was Africa for Africans at home and abroad. It was an anti-colonial movement. They had the Liberty Hall that it just talked about in Harlem, where, you know, there were constant events and different things going on all the time. And that there were businesses, there were cleaners, there were hotels, there were restaurants, there were bookstores, there were just every, you know, barbershops and all kinds of salons and all kinds of businesses that were connected to the Garvey movement all throughout Harlem. You can Google that, and there are maps that show where they were throughout Harlem. And there was the newspaper called the Negro World that was sent all throughout Africa, sent to all throughout the Caribbean and elsewhere around the world. And the Liberty Hall, Ho Chi Minh, who led the struggle for the liberation of Vietnam, reported that when he was in the Merchant Marine, when he was a young man, he came, he heard Garvey speak, and he came to Liberty Hall when he was in the US as the, you know, whatever it was called, the Merchant Marine or whatever. You know, the paper, the Negro World, was supporting Sandino in Nicaragua, and Farabundo Martí in El Salvador, and the struggle in Ireland, and sending messages, and even their own dignitaries there, you know, there to represent the African, you know, Africa and the African government. And
Uhuru was so powerful, but then what did the FBI do, and what did the white left do? What was our stand?
Yes. Okay. Well, I just wanted to give, I mean, it's so amazing what the Garvey movement was, and it's so wiped out of history. And only the party, the African People's Socialist Party, has really elevated it to its stature of the significance of this anti-colonial struggle. And so J. Edgar Hoover rose to prominence based on spying on Garvey and the Garvey movement. Hoover began in 1918 to begin spying on and writing, and they put actually the first Black FBI agent, James Wormley Jones, I think is his name, was infiltrated into the Garvey movement, who gave reports. And they talk about, you know, people, when they talk about the FBI, they talk about the Palmer raids, and the Palmer raids were instigated by the Attorney General Palmer at that time. And it was early on in the FBI's life that it attacked socialist organizations, especially from Eastern Europe and Italy, and you know, just people that might have an affinity for the victory of the Soviet Union. And they arrested 10,000 people. But the first raid, the first Palmer raid by Attorney General Palmer with the new, you know, J. Edgar Hoover, this is how he got his start, was on the Garvey movement. And I just wanted to just say a little bit in terms of, you know, the Communist Party did everything that it could to win Africans away from the Garvey movement, to denounce it. They had a Garvey must go campaign, and they created a contending organization called the African Blood Brotherhood that was funded by, the white left, and they were desperate because the Communist Party at that time was pretty large in the United States, but it only had something like 50 African members. So, they were trying to get all of the Africans away from Garvey, and they worked with the FBI to crush it. And one of the things that they did that is in Harold Cruz's book called The Crisis of the Negro Intellectual is they took on, this was a little bit later, but they took on the Scottsboro Boys, it was called, something where African men were put in prison based on, charges by a white woman that were completely bogus. And at that time, African people were sending in money towards that case and taking it on, and they were sending it to the Communist Party, and the Communist Party used it to buy their own building and to get bigger printing presses and all this kind of thing, not to go to that case. This is just so typical. And most of the white left, the organized white left, the socialists and the communists worked with the FBI, carried out a Garvey must go, helped to do everything possible to do their part to crush the Garvey movement, which was the anti-colonial, which was socialist internationalism of that time. And they slandered him. They said that he was a capitalist, and he was the internationalist of that period, and he was known throughout the world and respected. And they wanted to use similar charges, by the way, against Garvey as against Chairman, trading with the Enemy Act, the Foreign Agent Registration Act, all this kind of stuff. They use the same thing. And I have if somebody could put this in the chat, this that's in my script it's an article from the Washington Post from the 1990s called Black Moses, Red Scare. And it really gives the history of, the FBI attack on the Garvey movement. And it's a really, really powerful article. So Garvey influenced Kwame Nkrumah, it's just his influences around the world. And again, I want to salute Ted Vincent, by the way, who wrote an amazing book called Black Power and the Garvey Movement. And he brought that to the chairman and the party when the party was in Oakland. And the party actually published that book for him. And it was a really incredible book about the history of the Garvey movement, very powerful. Just really want to salute him.
Uhuru.
Yes.
Uhuru. Salute to the chairman and the party who've raised up Garvey and brought to light the historical continuum from Garvey through the Black Power struggle of the 1960s and today in the Uhuru movement's Black Star Industries and Black Power Blueprint programs that have revived and advanced Garvey's work to build self-reliance and economic power in the hands of the African working class. And Chairwoman Penny, I'm doing a terrible timekeeping job, and we're quite a bit behind to make sure we cover the points that we wanted to cover.
Okay.
Apologize. So, we do want to talk about the COINTELPRO of the 60s. So, going from the teens and 20s of the 20th century to the next period of revolutionary resistance by African people, when the civil rights movement reached its limitations and African workers advanced the struggle for Black power, we did see a concerted effort by the US government and the FBI to destroy it. So people may be familiar with the term COINTELPRO, which stands for Counterintelligence Program, which was just one form of an ongoing counterinsurgency effort akin to all the wars waged by colonial powers to crush the resistance of their colonial subjects. But we wanted to share the specific objectives, the stated objectives that were published of COINTELPRO designed to defeat the Black Revolution of the 1960s. So under J. Edgar Hoover, who again got his start destroying the Garvey movement, the FBI COINTELPRO program was aimed, targeted what the government had tagged as, quote, Black nationalist hate groups, which included the full spectrum of the Black movement from Martin Luther King to the Black Panthers, and used infiltration, harassment, disinformation, intimidation, violence, false imprisonment, and assassination. So the stated and published goals of COINTELPRO were to, one, prevent, and you can Google this, prevent the coalition of militant Black nationalist groups. I'm not going to read every bit of it. Two, to provide the rise of a, quote, messiah who could unify and electrify the militant Black nationalist movement. Three, to prevent violence on the part of Black nationalist groups. Four, to prevent militant Black nationalist groups and leaders from gaining respectability by discrediting them to three separate segments of the community. The goal of discrediting Black nationalists must be handled tactically in three ways. You must discredit those groups and individuals to, first, the responsible Negro community. Second, they must be discredited to the white community, both the responsible community and to, quote, liberals who have vestiges of sympathy for militant Black nationalists simply because they are Negroes. Third, these groups must be discredited in the eyes of Negro radicals, the followers of the movement. This last area requires entirely different tactics from the first two. Publicity about violent tendencies and radical statements merely enhances Black nationalists to the last group. It adds respectability in a different way. 5, a final goal should be to prevent the long-range growth of militant Black organizations, especially among the youth. Specific tactics to prevent these groups from converting young people must be developed. So, Chairwoman, do you want to talk about this COINTELPRO war on the African Indigenous movements and what stand was taken or not taken by white liberals, progressives, leftists?
Yes, I'm just going to sum this up, briefly, but I do want to say that I don't know that it's called COINTELPRO anymore, but that just simply means counterintelligence program. But I mean, obviously, these are the same goals that they had with Garvey. They're the same goals that they have with Chairman Omali Yeshitela. They want to destroy this movement and the influence and, the long range growth of African liberation organizations. It's still going on. It's still being attacked. And that in the 1960s, I would just say, a couple of things. Well, first of all, by the way, I do want to salute Ward Churchill. This is a really excellent book, Agents of Repression by Ward Churchill and Jim Vanderwall, the FBI's secret war against the Black Panther Party and the American Indian movement. And when we talk about the part about the American Indian movement, which he has an amazing history of, we're talking about the reality of Leonard Peltier still being in prison almost 50 years later. And, based on the ongoing struggle of Indigenous people for control over their lives and their land and their resources. In the 1960s, that, again, white opportunism was part and parcel of the counterinsurgency as the U.S. we begin to see the assassinations, in which, of course, we saw early on with Malcolm X, then Martin Luther King in 1967, then Fred Hampton in 1969. And their goal, as it said, was to break the back of the very young, very heady. I mean, some of the leaders, Fred Hampton was 20 or 21 at most. And, just very young, militant, fighters for African liberation in the 1960s. And as these very brutal attacks came down, which, there's always an assumption that, well, this is what the government's going to do to African people. It's very outrageous that this is that this is the kind of response. And there was yes, there were white people that marched. They marched with maybe the Black Panthers or others, but but there was nobody who could say white people condemn these attacks. There was no consciousness as white people, because that wasn't, there wasn't that politic, because the white left is that everybody's in this together, instead of there being the colonizer and the colonized. And the first consciousness of the ability of white people to say, yes, I represent white people under the leadership of the African Revolution and stand for reparations to African people, came from the leadership of the party, but that wasn't able to be there at the time. So there wasn't a sense of outrage from the white population against this. And I just wanted to read, a little bit, because this is a great thing where this pamphlet here, what's called The Political and Economic Critique of Imperialism and Imperialist Opportunism. And the chairman is saying in it, living in a country built and sustained off slavery, colonialism, and neo-colonialism, the impact of victorious revolutionary struggles reaches down to the gas tanks, shopping centers, and tax brackets of the North American population. There is an objective relationship between world slavery and US affluence. And up until now, the North American or white population opportunistically and demagogically have led by their stomachs, pocketbooks, and corrupt leadership, and have chosen the continued enslavement of the world. In the US, imperialism was constructed off the enslavement of African people and the near decimation of the native population. The system has been the cornerstone of world capitalism since the Second Imperialist War, which means, among other things, that the resources, the wealth, the near slave labor of the vast majority of the peoples of the world have been the basis for the development, not only the wealth of the ruling class, but of the entire North American society. Consequently, the basis of opportunism within the US is very deep. And, just the fact, just some things that, that we can say and about the white left in terms of, building itself, being evicted by the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee out of being, membership in SNCC, and called on to go into the white community to build mass white support for the liberation of African people. But they didn't do that. They didn't do that at all. And if you read the history of white people being evicted from SNCC, they were crying, they were heartbroken because they were the good white people. Why was this happening to them? This was part of the emergence of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee into the Black Power movement of the 1960s.
And they just told the white members, go into the white community and organize solidarity with the Black liberation movement. And the white members were like, we don't want to do that. We want to teach Black children to read. Right,
exactly. And they also immediately found the Vietnam War, which actually was something that Malcolm X had spoken out against, and Martin Luther King had. The African liberation movement had been the first to jump into absolute solidarity with the Vietnamese people against the US colonial, war that the US was carrying on. But suddenly white people found this war and, just sort of put all the efforts into an anti-war movement that was increasingly ignoring and not working in solidarity with the African liberation movement, the Black Power movement of that era. Just a few other things I would say. The Socialist Workers' Party still owns the rights to Malcolm X's books, 13 titles. The Socialist Workers' Party is called, their book company is called Pathfinder. And I think they originally published Malcolm X books. They have never turned that over to his family, or certainly not to the ongoing African liberation movement. The African People's Socialist Party should have that. If not, just that belongs to African people. But if you want to read, a book of Malcolm X's writings, you're probably going to buy it through Pathfinder Books, which is the Socialist Workers' Party. They have never turned that over. So just reading from the New Beginning, just talked about that. and there was no white response to the COINTELPRO counterinsurgency of the 60s. And
Well, and I've heard the chairman talk about how there was such an upheaval after Kent State when 4 white students were killed, but there had been killings of African students at African colleges all before and after that, tons of them, and you did not see that. You did not see that kind of response from the white community.
Right. And, I mean, it's really, it's just really, really clear. So just to say, so I just want to say that, and that, there's always been, we're just talking about KPFA and Pacifica attacks on the party for, just exposing the neocolonialism of Nelson Mandela, which now there's articles in the New York Times about that, but when the party raised that in the late 80s and early 90s, that Nelson Mandela was, a puppet of the US government. There was a whole shows, remember that, Sandy, on KPFA in Berkeley, attacking the party for doing that.
And this is a white left progressive station, and they would run speeches by Lionel Wilson, who was then mayor of Oakland, about the war on drugs. Launching the war on drugs, but which was, which we know is completely targeting the African community. It's part of this counterinsurgency war, but yet did not want to have aired speeches by Chairman Omali Yeshitela from the Black movement, from the Black community itself, that would critique and denounce the so-called war on drugs.
Never. I mean, didn't you get fired because you worked there?
I did.
Because you were playing the recordings from the party's first tribunal on reparations to African people. Isn't that correct?
Right. Yes, that and other speeches by the chairman. I had the job of putting something on the air if the volunteer didn't show up, and I would run speeches of the chairman, and that was not well received. It was opposed, that they didn't want to hear the voice of the African working class.
No, they didn't. I mean, it's just it's vicious, it's outrageous. And the white left unity with neocolonialism, it just jumps right in with the neocolonialists like Lionel Wilson, who, was just continued the war against the African community, which African workers were catching hell in Oakland. And the chairman said, even this is like in the late 80s, that they're trying to clean up Oakland, quote unquote, so they can gentrify it. And that's exactly what it is. It's like a posh Brooklyn's New York, same way.
Well, we saw the fervor from the sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. And we saw the fervor from the white progressive and liberal and left movement for Obama, which the party criticized as a neocolonialist, selected by the white ruling class to more effectively carry out the agenda of colonial imperialism, and all out support from the white left and white liberal sector.
True. And just the white left agenda, which is always about fascism, which is the party defines as when white people experience some aspects of what is everyday reality of colonialism for African people.
Well, and isn't that an aspect?
Democratic rights, it's fascism for white people. But
yes, and isn't that an aspect of why a very large sector of the Democratic Party, sort of a liberal sector, refuses to come out and speak out for hands off Uhuru, or defend the right of basic fundamental First Amendment freedom of speech, because they're part of the Democratic Party reform agenda, keep the system, just make it a little better, and fascism, and we have to all come around to keep Trump from getting elected. Like that's the fascism of today. But like you say, like the chairman always says, fascism is just when white people begin to experience a taste of what colonized people have experienced since the beginning of colonial
and always experience. And and Biden carries out to a T everything that Trump wanted to do.
He wrote the crime bill. He put 100,000
Exactly.
cops on the street.
Yes.
Yeah. He
Wrote
kept
the crime
he
bill.
kept the border, everything that Trump was doing, that everyone is so up in arms about. Biden doing the same thing. He's kept everything with the border and the whole question of immigration.
The wall, the whole,
Yeah,
the
no
absolutely.
different.
So that's why I just want to say, and just wrap this up, to say that, that this reparations question, first of all, is really critical. It gets to the heart of the colonial question. It's not a sideline thing. It's not a one-time payout. It's not a favor. It is the redistribution of the wealth of the world into the hands of the true working class of the world, which is the African working class, and the return of the stolen resources and land to the indigenous people and to the colonized people on the planet Earth. This is what the struggle, the essence of the struggle in the world. And, if we like try to bypass the colonial question and just go to something to, another issue. I mean, every contradiction stems from the primary contradiction, which is colonialism. And if we truly want, human rights, an end to war, the ability of people, all peoples, to live together on this planet, we have to end this system, the colonial mode of production, what is known as the United States of America, has to go. I'm sorry, it has to go. There is no living with it. And this is what I appreciate about the African People's Socialist Party. This is why I jumped in to be part of the African People's Solidarity Committee, to take this out. It's not a single issue, it's the whole thing. And otherwise we just kick the can down the road. Another generation of the suffering of African people. Look at the even the right to vote and all of this stuff. They can take that away anytime. And they do. They prevent African people from voting and from, or having anything meaningful to vote for, because like when the African People's Socialist Party put out a platform that addressed the conditions of the African community, and then the FBI comes in and attacks the Uhuru movement for an election and says it was caused by the Russians, which is what? Which is just absolutely laughable, except that they do this. And this is how they attack the African liberation movement. And we have to fight for this. We have to say that we defend Chairman Omali Yeshitela, we defend the right of the African People's Socialist Party and African people to fight for and win African liberation and the return of all their stolen resources. And I fight for my right to fight for reparations and to stand in solidarity with the African liberation movement. They can't take away my freedom of speech to do that. We're going to fight like hell. As white people, we have a right to stand in solidarity with the liberation of all oppressed peoples, and I'm going to fight like hell for that. We're joining in, putting the state on trial. We have to win more and more white people to stand on this side. Wake up and see, when the chairman, if they put the chairman in prison, if they defeat the right or attempt to, seriously wound the right of African people again to fight for their liberation, believe me, there will be no free speech in this country. There will be no free speech. But we have seen in the past, what it was that overturned the McCarthy era. It was the struggle of the Rosa Parks and all the African children going up against the fire hoses. It was the struggle for the right of African people to have political and economic power in their own hands. That's what overturned the McCarthy era, the 1950s.
That's right. And we're really seeing in this period, I mean, APSC was historic and unique in its formation, completely unique. And I know I had the honor of accompanying the party and you and contingents to events and places where there were Africans from the continent who said, I recall that there being a statement of, we read in the paper we read in the Spear about the Solidarity movement, but we didn't really believe it because we'd never seen that relationship between white people. And they dealt with liberals and white lefts on the continent too. So we never believed it until we came and we saw it in action. And it's unique and it's historic. And the chairman has also summed up how powerful it is that the state that there genuinely is white people behind enemy lines, inside the colonial reality, that are taking the stand. And it's changing now. I mean, that with the formation of the Hands Off Uhuru Fight Back Coalition, we're seeing what the party has called for and what APSC has represented, that a wider sector and more people are willing and able to see that the leadership does come from the African anti-colonial struggle. And if we want to be a part of the future, let's be co-conspirators in the fight to crush colonialism and end the mode of colonial production forever and stand on the side of humanity. I am definitely a co-conspirator in that fight.
But except that it's not a conspiracy, it's
That's right.
a burning spear, it's
Up front.
It's totally transparent. But I do want to say also that, our Solidarity Center, which is a building that is owned by the African People's Socialist Party, and we have the honor of being able to use, we also, paying the mortgage on this, and it's very exciting. And it's right on a very well-traveled street in South St. Louis, which is predominantly white. And there is a banner on the front of this building that says unity through reparations. And so many white people tell us how important that is, how glad they are to live in a neighborhood that has a building that says unity through reparations. And they saw what happened, the murder of Mike Brown, and just the conditions of African people. And it's really, really great. And so I just wanted to say finally that it was really important because in the 1960s, the police with the FBI of Chicago came at 4 o'clock in the morning and they cleared out all the homes around on the street on Monroe Street where Fred Hampton lived. And, they got all the people out, and then they came in the darkness and killed Fred Hampton and Mark Clark, who was a Black Panther leader who was there also. But this time they had to come to the white community. They couldn't just go into the African community in that way. To attack the party, they had to come to the white community and do that. And they did it very publicly out here. And it has not scared people away. It has, made people say, this is, I want to stand on this side. I want to join. I want to join the Solidarity movement. This is our future. This is how we join humanity. A lot of white people want to rectify, do not want to be the colonizers, do want to be the ugly American all around the world, do want to have, a principled relationship of reparations, of genuine solidarity with the people on the planet Earth. This is how you do it under the leadership of the African solution. So get on board. Let's build this Uhuru Solidarity movement. We have the Days of Reparations to African People coming up, here and in several other cities. And
Uhuru.
Get on board.
I believe we're going Uhuru, and we will have announcements. Yes, Uhuru. And Kat Law says, happy birthday to Chairman Fred Hampton Sr. But what a powerful history, happy birthday. What a powerful history and just a brilliant strategy developed and implemented by Chairman O'Malley and the party. So it's past time that we were going to move into an appeal part of tonight's program. Yeah, a little over. And then we will be opening it up for discussion. And there's one or two questions. I think there's comments and questions in the chat and QA. And we do want to hear from you. Please put your comments and questions into the chat. And I think we're going to hand it over for a minute to Brendan.
Brendan. So thank you so much, Chairwoman Penny and Sandy. This was an incredible discussion. Just absolutely full of incredible information, and I urge everyone to check out some of those resources they were talking about to get a little more into this topic. So I want to make sure everybody's aware we will be having a Q&A shortly. Please submit those questions in the Zoom Q&A feature or in the YouTube or Facebook chat. But before we do that, I do want to take a few minutes to tell you how you can get involved in solidarity with the African people's struggle for liberation and support this work. As I mentioned at the beginning of the program, we do have a goal today to raise $500. These funds that we raise in these web events, they go to the expenses of the Uhuru Solidarity Center here in St. Louis, where we are currently. And there it is, the beautiful Solidarity Center, right off Grabway. That is a building owned by the African People's Socialist Party that APSC is responsible for developing, promoting as a real tangible place in the world that we can build the movement for white reparations to the African community here in St. Louis and around the world, just everywhere. It is the headquarters for the African People's Solidarity Committee here and abroad. Next slide, please. Through 6 workdays, this is kind of like the before and after. So 6 workdays beginning in November of 2021, organizers and volunteers completed a first phase of renovations. You can kind of see some of these changes. We have the before and after shots, the transformation of the floor into the beautiful red color paint with epoxy coating, the fresh white walls with the black semi-gloss trim. Next slide, please. This is a look from inside, looking through the front windows of the building. So you see, the before on the left, and then after is just completely different and absolutely gorgeous. And again, please go and donate. APSCUhuru.org/donate to keep this building up and going, keep it looking fantastic, and keep it as a home base where we can really kind of push this work forward. So there you go. Here is another view of the main room, just a different perspective there, used as a display area for Uhuru Planet reparations apparel and other Buy Black Power products. You can kind of see the shirts, and that's only like half of them, if that. There's so many incredible products out in the other room. And this work was possible because of our amazing volunteers, some of which, pictured here. We'll run through a few quick shots of these work days. And yep, there's some more volunteers. I think Chair Jesse was one of those as well. And Hallie, another member of APSC, just, the community coming together and getting this work done, and people showing real solidarity and really working to get all this done. And if you have donated and you want to do more, if you're unable to donate, but you want to participate somehow, you really want to, contribute to this work, you can also go to, uhurusolidarity.org and /volunteer and become a volunteer. It doesn't matter where you are. You don't need to be here in St. Louis. We need volunteers everywhere. Okay, and then in early 2022, the Solidarity Movement started hosting events such as volunteer actions, potluck, which that looks really good there on the top picture, film nights, also political education studies led by Chairwoman Penny Hess. So there was, the space for live broadcasts, which you can kind of see behind me there. Next slide. And then here's another view. This kind of gives you a better picture of all these products that Uhuru Planet has, and Buy Black Power products that are sold here in the center. There we go. And this is a picture from the grand opening in 2022. That actually might have been the first event I was ever at, and just an incredible event. With the jam-packed, the chairman spoke, Chairwoman Penny Hess, just an incredible event, and everybody was so excited just about having this building and having a place that the Solidarity Movement and APSC could really, kind of push this work forward. So then in July of 2022, the Uhuru Solidarity Movement organized Reparations Summer. This was a several-day intensive, including presentations from Chairman Amalia Shatella. It's just a clip from that. There's some more of that, just, an incredible event. And then next slide, the outreach, this outreach, you can kind of see like the team for the outreach distributed thousands of pieces of literature in the white communities of St. Louis, which we're currently in our days of reparations, the solidarity movement, and we'll be doing a lot more of that here and really everywhere across the United States. There'll be actions such as these. And again, please go and support apscahuru.org/donate to kind of help fund these actions, help keep the Solidarity Center up and going. So it was shortly after Reparations Summer. I love this picture, that the FBI brutally raided 7 offices and homes of the Uhuru movement, including the Solidarity Center here. You can see in the picture, this is actually me and one of our other comrades, Zoya. We are fixing one of the windows that the FBI busted on their way into busting down the door. Just kind of a nonsense little, no reason to do it, just shattered the window. And so yeah, with the help of the volunteers, we fixed it all up, and it looks incredible out there again. So next slide. The FBI attacks, they have not stopped this work. If anything, they've pushed it forward. It is critical that we fund the Solidarity Center to ensure it remains available as a resource that is open to the community and part of the Black Power blueprint. So part of building economic and political power in the hands of the Black community. So here's a photo of USM members and volunteers who gathered at the center to poster for the USM convention. And again, this is all a strategic part of the fight back. The Solidarity Center, like all of this has a place in overturning this system. So the work of the Solidarity movement continues to grow and has continued to grow this year with ongoing outreach and fundraising. Here's a picture, I think at Tower Grove. This might have been the punk rock flea market, which was awesome. The Uhuru Planet booth, we try and get it out. Comrades Hallie and Len do such a great job with outreach and are at so many events. This was such a cool event put on by Comrade Anya here in St. Louis that had just the coolest program and all these different performers. We had fire dancers like aerial acrobatics. There was also a group of tap dancers, an only 60 and older tap dance group. Just some incredible performers. So it was Moving for the Movement was the name of the fundraiser, and it was to raise money for the Uhuru Wakalia African Women's Health Center. It was held at this beautiful performing arts venue here in St. Louis. And the Uhuru Solidarity Movement continues to be a vital resource for people from the white community in St. Louis to come together to plan and organize these kinds of things. Like this center is such an integral and an incredibly important part of planning and organizing events like these. So as well as other fundraisers for reparations and other events for solidarity with the Black Liberation Movement. And thank you for that PowerPoint. That was incredible. So yeah, I would like to call on everybody again. Please go to apscahuru.org/donate and contribute. So far we have raised $275 towards our goal. I know we can do better than that. I know we can reach that $500 goal. We've still got make that $300. So we've still got $200 left to raise. And they're just coming in. as
I
we're
put
sitting here.
in also, but I don't see my name.
Oh,
So just to say,
oh,
we're filling it out.
I'll
as
go.
we speak.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start shouting some people out.
Okay.
So yeah, and also I'll go ahead and shout out where everybody's tuning in from. So we've got Leah from Minneapolis, Drew in Baltimore, Mike from Maryland, Len here in St. Louis, Karpani in Arcata, California, Kat in
Arcata.
Northwest. What's that?
Arcata.
Arcata, sorry. Kat in Northwest Indiana, Virginia and Louisville, Kentucky, Susan in Boston. And I know we've got more comrades than that if you want to put that in the chat. And then shout out some of our donors, which we're now at $428.
Right.
So that happened very quickly. I know we've got such incredible comrades, so of course it did. But I threw in $50. Leah from Minneapolis threw in $50. Allison $25. Becky $25. Ruby $25. Maureen $50.
Wow.
Len $25. Kitty $25, Janice $50, Susan $50, Penny $50. We had an anonymous donor throw in $3. Everything helps. Everything, this is all crucial. It doesn't, whatever you were comfortable or not comfortable with giving is, it's still important. Lisa $50. So, we are right there. We are so close to hitting our goal. $72 left. If anybody wants to go ahead and
Put in 72.
take the step up at 72 or one of 50, one of 22. We're just about there.
Uhuru, I'm gonna do the 22. Somebody else can get the 50.
Uhuru saying yes.
Right,
Oh, and
Sandy.
look at that. And Kara just said, or sorry, just put in 50. Okay.
Oh, Kara. Wow.
Uhuru. Awesome.
Awesome.
So Uhuru comrades, we made our goal. I knew we would. So
Doesn't mean we have to stop, but should
No.
we go into some of the comments and questions? We do
Yes.
have some.
Yeah, we'll go ahead. We'll move on. But yeah, please keep donating. Please keep contributing, supporting this incredibly
Really
important.
thank everybody. Wow, that's so exciting, and just going to the Black Power Blueprint in the white community. So under the leadership of the party.
Uhuru. Okay, gonna take a look at our Q&A now. Alex mentioned the Pearl Button documentary.
What is that?
That I think it was, so it's a documentary about like the genocides in Chile. I know that's
Chile.
I haven't
Yeah.
seen, but
No, I haven't. I haven't seen that at all.
Yeah,
That's
he put the
the
link in the
right down
chat,
and
and
look
also Virginia had shared the link to the Leonard Peltier Ad Hoc Committee, freeleonardpeltiernow.org.
yes,
Definitely encourage people to check that out.
Yeah,
Alex put
so-
the Wikipedia link to the Pearl Button, so people can see that in the chat.
yeah, I'm definitely going to check that one out. That looks incredibly interesting. Thank you, Alex, for that recommendation.
Yeah.
And Paulette from the Free Leonard campaign is reminding us that it's Leonard's birthday, I believe. It's going to be 79 on September 12th.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah, September 12th.
That
Yes.
is,
Absolutely.
gotta free him.
Yeah.
So, we do have a question from an anonymous attendee. Was it not an afterthought to get the Democratic Black women vote by Biden due to his assumptions they will just be against Trump, and his poll found out they were the old base of Democrats not going to be helped by Biden?
Right.
So
I mean, I think I understand what you're saying, that basically Biden uses the African community to get votes, and the Democratic Party does that, but yet it never does anything for African people, especially not African workers. But one of the things that's happening is that they're losing their base of African people. And there have been articles about that in the mainstream media. And a lot of that is through the work of the African People's Socialist Party, constantly putting out, from Obama, but always, that's exposing the Democratic Party as a ruling class party to maintain control and colonial domination of African people, and to use African people, but never give something. And as was said, Biden is the one who wrote the crime bill, which escalated the 3 strikes you're outlaws against African people, which is used very much against African people, put 100,000 cops on the streets who have been out there ever since, murdering the George Floyd, the Mike Browns, the Breonna Taylors, and all of the African people that are killed by the police every year. So the thing that the goal is African people have to have their own power over their own lives. And the Black is Back Coalition, which is sponsoring November 4th March on the White House, and I really call on everybody to go to blackisback.org and sign up and be there at the March on Washington on November 4th, because this is going to be a march on the White House, by the way. And there's going to be the, drop the charges against Chairman Omali Yeshitela and the Uhuru 3, but also the Leonard Peltier struggle will be represented there, and so many others. Everything from
the Tampa 5, the Venezuelan diplomat,
the Stop Cop City, Alex Cobb, and etc. And even Julian Assange. I mean, all of this comes under the fight for African people to have the right to free speech, to struggle for their liberation. So,
and I just wanted to, were you finished?
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to add to that. I watched, if people missed the Black is Back convention, I think, was it last weekend? The Black is Back conference, the 14th or 15th or 17th annual conference that happened in St. Louis, is a really interesting presentation by Cam Howard about the Black vote, and
That's
how
right.
he broke down all the numbers and showed how in every election where a Democrat has won, it's been because of the Black vote. That in every single election for the past 100 years, since the Tilden Hayes Compromise, when Africans switched from being Republicans because of Abraham Lincoln over to being Democrats because how they were sold out by the Republicans, in every single election, the majority of white people vote Republican. And the only way that a Democrat wins is if they have a strong majority from the Black vote. And, he totally broke it down in numbers. And so part of the thrust of the, as I understand it, of the November 4th March on White House is to say, Democrats, you're in power, you rely on the African vote. And here you are attacking the African community. Drop the charges.
Uhuru. I do want to shout out a couple comments from Olivia. Thank you for letting it be known the existence of the USA is opposite of freedom, which is oppression to its very core. And also bless these new doula graduates. May one day we have the care we need, an opportunity to go through the experience of raising our children. Uhuru to the organizers who've made national headway. #arrestcps.org. So, and then we also have a question from Janet. Penny, thank you for all your work. Can you point us to articles and or citations about how white leftists sabotage the Black liberation movement, especially these examples that you just talked about?
Well, there is some of this in the book, Overturning the Culture of Violence, which is which I wrote under the leadership of the chairman. And it just is a book that documents white people's role throughout, the whole colonialism and the taking over of the colonial conquest of this land, and all that is, and this came out several years ago, but you can find out more, you can see more about this now, but you couldn't then. And
heavily footnoted and cited, if I recall.
Yes, it is. And so that this has a lot about the role of white people on the white left, and that's a place, and it has a lot of other books that were used to write this and to get information from. So there are other things, and also the books by the chairman Chairman O'Malley Shatella, like, you can go to Burning Spear Marketplace, I think it is, or what
The
is
Burning Spear store.
yeah,
Yep.
burningsphere.store, and see the books like Vanguard by Chairman O'Malley Shatella, The Uneasy Equilibrium. And he's always, all throughout his entire political life, he has summed up the opportunism of the white left and white people, and, and calls on white people to, to take that on and overturn it, and, and shows that the relationship of white people under the leadership of the African liberation movement, and the African liberation movement represents the interests of the indigenous and Mexican and all oppressed, and Palestinians, all oppressed and colonized people, is located in this struggle for African liberation, because it's going to be an end to a system built at the expense of somebody else. So yeah, so there's, the chairman's writings are brilliant. They're amazing. And
The political and economic critique of imperialism is, to me, one of the best examples. And I was just looking on the store. It's not currently available, but maybe we can get that reprinted.
Yeah, it's a pamphlet, right? That is really powerful. There's also O'Malley Shatella Speaks, which has that's a great book also, and several others. So yeah.
So I know we are over time. I apologize for that. We're going to do one more question, but I do want to shout out Carpani, who donated $25.
Oh, sure.
That's our total $525. Thank you, comrade. And then our last question. I know everyone is unfortunately but unavoidably affected by the abuse of USA drug war, the war against people who are dying in jails, and it goes unannounced, tied into Black Power and all of our survivors of drug war policies. What organizations can people who have time volunteer, put these efforts towards these efforts? Do you know? I know of one, but want any of those known. Harm Reduction Coalition, drugpolicy.org has free online conference to end criminalizing our attempts to survive. This might be the most important issue crossing white and Black organizer homes and hurts everyone but prisons. Suggestions, please, comrades.
Is that
join the African People Solidarity Committee?
Anonymous.
Oh, anonymous. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say solidarity.
Well, yeah, and
For a
also,
permanent solution to permanent war.
Yeah.
yes, that's right, and also because again, this is about ending the system, building real socialism, which must be led by African people, not by white people. And therefore, all the needs of African people will be the agenda of a society, just like Haiti was. The liberation in Haiti, which is another whole thing that I want to do a whole program on, because white people know so little about the victory of Toussaint Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines in Haiti. And they just had a constitution that was beautiful in 1804, way before socialist revolution and everything. It was an incredible victory. So this is what it means, when African people win, all people will be free.
When I was about 21, I moved to San Francisco. I had a social work job working with teenagers in the Tenderloin who were in prostitution and drug use, to try to give them some assistance, give them a bus ticket, give them a hotel, I guess they didn't call it harm reduction back then, but that's kind of what it was. And, my heart was just broken for, all these 12-year-olds getting off the bus. And I just came to realize, and then I had been involved with, other kinds of movements addressing, really important issues. But it wasn't until I met the African People's Socialist Party that I saw how all of it was tied in together, and how the real solution is to overturn the system and build a world. I mean, if you look in places like Cuba, build a world where all things can be solved. So if you look in St. Louis with the doula program and with the African Women's Health Center, where so many Black babies die that could fill 13 kindergartens, You know, the solution is in the kind of work that the Uhuru movement is doing. So I do encourage everyone to join the Uhuru Solidarity Movement, join the African People's Solidarity Committee. It really is the long-term, it really is the genuine solution. It won't be a solution in find immediate, I'm sorry, but an immediate harm reduction. I mean, honestly, the way I felt, I'm just like spinning my wheels, and it's every day 16 more kids would get off the bus. So like, you know, this is for real, and it's harder and it's longer and it's hard. It's not immediate gratification, but it is the future that we can be a part of.
Uhuru, yeah, I really appreciate that, Sandy. And I mean, yeah, the way to change the world is to be, you know, become a member of Uhuru Solidarity Movement and even African People's Solidarity Committee. And also the Hands Off Uhuru Coalition is another amazing, wow, very dynamic front. Yes. That is just changing the world every single day. The chairman is fighting like hell. And if you want to fight against prison and all of this stuff, this is where, you know, this is the front lines, this incredible dynamic led by Mwezi Odom, who is the chair of that from the party. She's so dynamic. And, you know, anyway, that's another front of this movement as well that definitely people can jump into and be part of.
Uhuru. And if you do want to join the African People's Solidarity Committee, please go to apscuhuru.org/join and fill out that form.
And I have one, yes. I said one more thing. I was just looking at the chat a little bit. I saw Karpani. I hope you're going to come to Day of Reparations in Oakland. We will be, Jesse and I, and of course, Chairman Omali Shatella will be there. I forgot which day it is now, but I think it's in early October. And I believe you're in California. So I've just seen your name a lot. Of course, I recognize your name is unusual, so I recognize it. And just hope you'll come. If you can come to Oakland when we're there, it would be great. It's going to be a great event, Uhuru.
And we are getting a lot of support for a lot of people want to see a program on Haiti.
Salikia from the party, whose family is from Haiti and who is she knows a lot and really talks about that. That would be a great event. Also, just really want to salute Wendy Snyder, who is joining from Oakland and is going to be coordinating the Day of Reparations out there. So looking forward to that. October 2nd says, okay, sorry. So we'll be there for October 2nd for the Day of Reparations in Oaktown, Uhuru.
And one last shout out to Raya who donated $25. So
comrade. So, Raya, comrade from the Oakland years as well.
Who fought the white left on UC Berkeley campus.
Physically, right.
Tried to kick her off, and she was not leaving.
Uhuru, thank you, comrades. Before we move on to announcements and closing, Penny and Sandra, do you have any final words?
Well, you know, the party is going to kick the ass of the ruling class. That's one of its slogans. It's going to win political and economic power. That's what it's doing. It's going to fight back, put the state on trial, and we're going to defend Chairman Omali Shatella, the African Revolution, and our right to fight for reparations to African people. That's my freedom of speech that I would fight like hell for. And this is an incredible period of time, comrades. We have the ability to change the world, to be part of the cutting edge of what is defining the future for all of humanity. And believe me, this planet is not going to last very much longer under this colonialism, this colonial mode of production. And, what we need to see is African, Indigenous, and oppressed people have power over their lives, the return of their stolen resources so that they can live and produce life for themselves and not for anybody else. Uhuru.
Uhuru, no compromise, no surrender. We are relentless. The party is winning, and unity through
Uhuru.
reparations.
Unity
Yes,
through reparations.
Reparations. Uhuru.
Uhuru. Thank you, comrades. Thank you, Chairwoman Penny. Thank you, Comrade Sandy. We are going to move on to our announcements. Here we go. We got yep. So join the counteroffensive to stop the FBI attacks on the African People's Socialist Party and the African liberation struggle. Drop the charges against the Uhuru 3. Donate or volunteer with the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa Defense Campaign today. For more information, go to handsoffuhuru.org to volunteer, donate, sign the petition. If you haven't done that, please go do that. And sign the emergency response pledge. So same with that. And announcing the new book, the verdict is in, Reparations Now, 40th anniversary edition of the report from the 1982 World Tribunal on Reparations to African People, including a foreword by Luwezi Kinshasa, additional testimonies, and an epilogue by Chairman Amalia Shatella. Order your copy today at theburningspear.store. And the chairman will be embarking on a book tour of several cities this fall. Stay tuned to theburningspear.com/events for updates. I've got my signed copy. I'm really happy to have that. And I just started reading it the other day.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Incredible. So a powerful movement is rising to stop the U.S. government's desperate efforts to imprison Chairman Amalia Shatella for fighting for the liberation of Africa and African people. The Days of Reparations to African People campaign is a call to white people to join in solidarity with the growing movement under the leadership of the African and colonized peoples of the world to demand hands off Chairman Amalia Shatella. Hands off Uhuru, drop the charges against the Uhuru 3. For more information about Days of Reparations campaign events near you and how you can get involved from wherever you are, visit uhurusolidarity.org. All out to Washington, D.C. on November 4th for the 15th annual Black People's March on the White House, sponsored by Black is Back Coalition of Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations, and the Hands Off Uhuru Fight Back Coalition. The theme of this year's mobilization is not one step backwards. Drop the charges against the Uhuru 3. There will be a pre-rally on Friday, November 3rd, the day before the march, and there will be a conference on Sunday, November 5th, the day after the march. Register now at tinyurl.com/Uhuru3 and follow blackisbackcoalition.org and handsoffahuru.org for more information. The September issue of the Burning Spear newspaper is here. Orders already placed may be somewhat impacted by the hurricane, but they are on their way. If you haven't ordered yet, you can do so at theburningspear.store. And a reminder that you can find resources to support your distribution efforts at apscuhuru.org/spear toolkit. And it is really an incredible resource to have. Definitely bookmark that page. On Sundays at 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern, tune in and join the live discussion on the hashtag Amali Taught Me Sunday Study. Deepen your understanding of African internationalism. It's broadcast on youtube.com/@theburningspear and facebook.com/amali.yeshatella. Find details about these and more upcoming events at theburningspear.com/events. And make sure to visit uhurusolidarity.org and apscuhuru.org to learn more about the Uhuru Solidarity Movement and the African People's Solidarity Committee and how you can become a member and join the work to build white solidarity with Black power and unity through reparations. I want to thank you so much, APSC Chairwoman Penny Hess. And I would also like to thank Comrade Sandy for joining and to everyone else participating today. This concludes today's event. We'll see you next time. Hands off Uhuru, hands off Africa. Drop the charges against the Uhuru 3. Unity through reparations.